everyone! In this episode, we're going to be talking about sustainability, sustainable fashion specifically, and for that specific topic, we've brought in an expert, our friend Ruth, who is an ethical fashion blogger who's also worked with sustainable brands, and she's also a volunteer at Fashion
Revolution.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ruth, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to admit that it's not really something that I know a lot of. So I guess probably, I'm probably not alone. So if you could ease us into it in a way that, explain to us what sustainable fashion is, why would we, start thinking about,
For sure. And yeah, you're definitely not alone. So the way I like to think about sustainable fashion, I tend to say ethical fashion just because I think then it encompasses not just like the environmental side, but also the human side. Is that the word ethical means doing what's right, and that can mean anything from fashion that has a low impact on the environment, for example, using organic fibers, zero waste techniques. And it also means paying a fair wage and treating garment workers fairly. And it can encompass a huge variety of different ways that a brand can be sustainable. And the reason it's important, I think, if you care about climate change, and I'm sure a lot of you do, we're in a state of climate emergency has been declared, and fashion has a massive part to play. Some statistic came out the other day that the fashion industry is more polluting than all international flights and maritime shipping combined.
Wow.
So it's one of the most polluting industries in the world. And I think people are only just sort of coming to terms with that. And then there's also the crisis of the way we manufacture clothing and overproduce clothing, in other parts of the world that we don't see.
So could you be sustainable and not be ethical, or should these two have to, go hand in hand all the time?
I think sustainability needs to encompass everything. And I don't think, sustainability is about building a better world for the future, and, humanity has to come into that as well, I'd say.
Yeah, because if you think about it, we're going to be, changing our clothes all the time. So it's really, I think it's probably a couple of years too late, I would say. But now that, we're really shining a light on it, a lot of brands are doing it as well. So probably, the time really is now.
Yeah, absolutely is now. I think we've reached a tipping point, to be honest with you. Our consumption is at an all-time high right now. We're buying more clothes than we ever have in any other year. So the time is now for change, both for brands and for shoppers as well, and for consumers.
I guess my question would be like, how can you become sustainable?
As a brand or as a consumer?
Let's tackle the consumer part.
That's a little easier. I think maybe people feel quite overwhelmed by it because they feel maybe that it would have to be perfect straight away. But I think a great place to start is just to start asking questions. So rather than just taking everything at face value, it's sort of, I work with Fashion Revolution, and their question that they encourage you to ask when you're shopping or when you're browsing brands on social media is, who made my clothes? And this is just a relatively simple question, but it can tell you a lot about a brand's values. So if they can answer that question to you and say, we make our clothes in this factory, it's certified fair trade, our workers are paid a living wage, these sorts of answers, then you can start to see how it aligns with your own sort of moral compass. And that's a personal thing to each person. I can't say you should believe this thing, but I think we all think that the people who make our clothes should be paid fairly at the very least.
Yeah, I think it's because when, especially for the younger generation, if they think about sustainable, let's say, clothing, they would think about, it's going to be expensive, and especially with the pressures of social media today. Younger generation, I'm actually guilty of this as well. It's like, I don't want to repeat my outfits all the time. And it's just one of those things that kind of like attract me, let's say, to not necessarily like fast fashion, but going towards that direction.
I think that's a big sort of myth sort of hangover from the past of sustainable clothing being ugly or not being cool, or looking like a big hemp sack. And the reality is so different now. I mean, there are so many amazing brands that I love to shop from. I was thinking of some examples of brands that I really like their clothing. So like Lucy and Yak, who do these amazing dungarees, and Birdsong are really great. Organic Basics for like any basics. There are so many now, it's actually just like hard to list, because like new ones are popping up all the time. And also like the secondhand industry is just gone explosive, right? I mean, like the sort of resale market, Depop, and the luxury side, like the Vestiaire Collective and all of those too. Personally, I buy mostly secondhand, and I don't think people would be like, oh, she's wearing secondhand, or like, oh, she doesn't. I think it's changed so much, and we just have to keep pushing that you can be sustainable and stylish. It's not one or the other.
Yeah, funny how you mentioned Depop. Like my younger brother, for example, and a couple of his friends are there,
right,
who are both selling and buying from it. So would you say that it will come down to just educating people on how to be sustainable, and breaking down the myth?
Yeah, I think I mean, you talk about young people, they're kind of like leading the change, because when I was in school, if you shopped in a charity shop, you were like, ooh, you must be like poor or whatever, or oh, didn't someone die in those, But now this sort of like Depop generation is emerged, and it's really interesting to see what's happening there.
So it's mainly like peer-to-peer that's actually pushing through,
I'd say so,
through the barriers.